as we get more into like the game now, let me ask you this, Brez, what was your initial thoughts when we first saw that we were gonna get this matchup?
See, I'm going with fire because like just conversationally because it's Glenn, right? It's all about how the hell do you stop this 30 touchdown machine that's running up the
Yeah,
middle of 6 yards to carry. It's hard, and then of course with the youth, like they're a smaller linebacker core. I'll get to it later. Like Swanko's like 5'10", 5'11", 205, 206. Tulitza about the same, a little bit bulkier. Lalo is naturally a defensive back. They've moved into a nickel position. He's like 6'3", 215, but again, he's not a natural linebacker. So, you've got questions. So he gets that second level. How are Vienna going to deal with that? And it's something that I don't know if I want to say that we saw the Surge kind of do well with it because he did, of course, a few fumbles. What I've taught, I think Kuller looks like he's hurt his wrist from a visionary standpoint, but that was a big thing, is that they were able to make him force fumbles. And that's something we hadn't seen at all in the regular season. So that's going to be the big thing, is can you get that ball out of Glenn Tonga's hands?
What about you? What about you, Alex? What was your first initial thoughts when you saw we were going to get Fire Vikings?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, those semifinal games were just amazing, especially
Great,
the Surge.
great
and
game,
Fire game.
great games.
So we kind of knew either way we're going to get a really good matchup. As my stuff is falling down behind me. Anyway, the matchup, I think Matt brought it up, like the box of the Vikings. Can they stop Glenn? Has anyone been able to stop Glenn, even in the rain? The Surge, like what? He still had 100-something yards. It's going to be really tough to stop Glenn. I think the only weakness maybe the Rhein Fire have is right in the interior of their line. I know Weinstock didn't have his best game in the rain. And that's actually a strength, I would say, for the Vikings. Thomas Schaefer, big nose guard. If he can play his best game, it could be a key for the Vikings.
Yeah, a lot of pressure that too. They sent a lot of blitzes up the A's and B's.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if JP's back too, Bombeck. I'm not sure the status of his injury, but having the extra week off and not really playing in the semis, it'd be interesting to see if he's able to contribute at all in this matchup as well. When I first thought about this matchup, there's a couple things. One, once the Vikings won, immediately got excited. We're getting a matchup we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Never seen, at least this season, in the ELF. So that was exciting. Nothing against Paris, Fire, but obviously I'm always intrigued about, watching new matchups. Obviously, Ravens, Paris, that was a classic. In the semifinals, they were classics as well too. So those are good matchups. Another thing that caught my attention when finding out these teams are going to play each other is, in a way, the Vikings are familiar with the Fire, and at least against the Fire offense, because they played against it twice 2 years ago against Barcelona, against Andrew Weidinger. So they kind of know or have an idea what they might get, just different athletes on the field that obviously that presents different problems or how to go about those. So that would be interesting. I also think we're getting the best Vikings team that we've seen, and this is even including the championship team that they had 2 years ago. I think this team has more weapons. I think they could be a little bit more explosive. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go against, again, that Fire defense that we briefly talked about. So, instantly when we found out we were going to get Vikings Fire, I immediately got excited to break it down and excited to just talk about it. And one of the things that, we wanted to dive into here is matchups, because matchups make fights. We all know that. We all know it's not necessarily the best team that wins. It depends on, their opponent and who they're going against. Alex, I want you to give me a matchup to watch in this game.
All right, matchup to watch. Florian Bierbaumer, Marius Kenzie. Florius Bierbaumer, beat the linebackers at the second level. I just put a Marius Kenzie, the first guy I thought of. I think Bierbaumer could play a huge role in this game. He's the mismatch that I see. Okay, this guy can win consistently, maybe against the Rhein Fire defense, where there's really not a lot of places where I can say that, right? Because that defense is so stacked. So maybe he's the key to the Vikings scoring a lot of points on Sunday.
It's It's interesting you say that because at the same time when I was thinking about matchups to watching this game and how this game might go, I said Flamore Seaman and Beer Bomb.
Yeah, yeah.
The reason why is because I think Kenzie might be playing more in the box. I think Flamore is someone who might have a chance to line up on Beer Bomber more. But at the same time, it depends how they call the game in their offensive schemes. But all in all, I think the common denominator is who's going to guard Beer Bomber. Because as of late, he's been on a little bit of a tear and making plays, and he was hurt earlier in the year. So I guess the common denominator between you and Alex is like Beer Bomber. Who's going to guard him? Maybe Matt Breslington might have the answer for that, or he may go in a different direction. Why don't you give us a matchup to watch this game?
I'm gonna go slightly different. I'm gonna go to outsides. I'm gonna go switch the offense and defense. I'm gonna go for Knight and also with Weapon X. I think Xavier Edwards and him, that's gonna have a matchup to watch. Both two very quick, speedy, fast, athletic receiver and DB. Xavier Edwards more experienced, and McKnight, as we saw on ELF Live, is not a fan of some of the DBs that he's played. Like, maybe a little bit lackadaisical, coming in a little bit, easy. But there's so many, I could go on and on and on. Obviously, matchups and scouting is my thing. So, even Aaron Donkor playing against Milanovic, that's going to be such a good matchup. You got Hugo Kagles against Matt Daltrey in the interior line. Harlan, who the hell's going to stop Harlan Kofi? Hazard is a good corner, but Harlan's different. He's so physically strong. I did so many different interesting matchups. So Ben Straight as well. He could be someone that comes in. Yeah. They narrow down this box. I think they're going to have to do that against. But then if you do that, you risk Jay, who probably I think some people would argue has the biggest arm. So those safeties against Jay, going to be interesting to see how that works out. There's a ton. There's honestly, I think every single you could probably make about 50 combinations of just Beer Bomber alone. So the fact you can do it with both teams offensively and defensively, I think is it makes such an interesting final. I think I might be wrong. I feel like this is the best two teams we've ever seen of these teams. I know that sounds a bit mental because they ran far last year. They're the best defense in the league this year. You could argue they would lock up last year's team, and this is we and you, Jamal, agreed that Vienna is better this year and they weren't the championship teams. This is crazy.
Yeah. I almost want to say we're going to see fireworks, but that would be discrediting how good these defenses are too. So it's, we got some prop bets. We'll see, what you guys think on those topics. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you could point to a lot of different directions. You could point to Ben Holmes, as I mentioned, going up against Amari and Marlo Shawn. You could point to, the trenches up front. The Vikings run a very unique. I think they're a 3-3-5 stack defense. Sometimes they'll go 3-2-6 with more DBs on the field, but at the same time, you got to have some beef because otherwise they're just going to run the ball right down you. And I would say this year, this is Andrew Weidinger's best running efforts because he's mostly been the guy that's going to kill you through the air. Barcelona 2 years ago, Ryan Fryer last year, and the best back he's had is probably the best back the league has ever had. Yes, I'm saying it, Matt, even though I'm a Madre fan. The best back he's had is probably the best back the league has ever had in Glenn. And
Come on, Jamal.
You saw how he's able to utilize those weapons. We'll see.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, Weidinger, I feel like every week he's got some great new plays. I mean, that tight end leaking out in the semi was exactly what they needed. It's really he's a magician with the play call sheet. It'll be interesting to see what he's got for Sunday.
Even as a defensive player, I can appreciate a good offensive scheme. So shout out to Andrew. I know he pays attention sometimes, but let's we went into some matchups. I want to talk about some guys that could be X factors or difference makers in the game. So Brez, talk to me about a guy who can make a difference in this game that maybe we're not thinking about, or maybe lost sight of them throughout this matchup. Give me a guy you're thinking about.
Oof! I just made 2 videos on this, so I'm well prepared. I might go a little bit outside the box. I'm gonna go for Harlan because there's been a lot of secondary DBs and a lot of teams have that locked in defensive back core. Vienna, and again, I want to like kind of take a bit of an L with the defensive backs of the Vienna Vikings. They're very good, but Holland for me is better than quite a lot of the American receivers that we've had this year. And that might sound a little crazy, but like fantastic blocker, big physical. We've seen him coming in the semifinal. He was good there. He had that big drop, but like he's also been injured quite a lot this season. So he could be an X factor, or he could be maybe a little bit more of a shadow player where he just kind of comes in, takes a little bit of pressure off of someone like McKnight, forces the defense to respect him. But he's such a good receiver. Like he might be the most balanced receiver in the entire league because he can do everything. Like he can do everything. I fully want to do an evaluation on him too because he's just such a good player. I don't really know who they've got to move someone like Lalo on to try and deal size with size, to try and beat size with speed. It's an interesting one that I'm not entirely sure how they're going to manage to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings don't play a lot of man, but they can when they have to. Even so, like if you're assuming X is going to be on McKnight, if they do go man, who covers Kofi, right? Because you even if you are playing man and you're scared of him in the pass game, Kofi will block somebody into the stands. Yeah. Like Kofi is a low key dog, so he's definitely a difference maker. What about you, Alex? Who you got?
All right, so we're talking about receivers. I'll bring up another receiver here. I might butcher his name here. Kimi Lanainima, the 2022 ELF Championship MVP. Caught 6 passes for 120 yards. He threw a touchdown in that championship. When Coach Chris Kalaikai talks in the press conferences, my thoughts are not on how's Kimi going to do this weekend. To me, he's like a guy I forget about. But Coach Kalaikai brings him up constantly, and I think that's for a reason. The guy is really underrated, makes great possession catches. He can stretch the field. He's faster than he looks, and he's got championship pedigree. So we got 2 receivers who had coming out parties in the championship game for our sleepers here.
It almost makes me think like who's next up, right? Who's that next receiver that's going to shine bright in the biggest game of in all European football?
Could be Torre,
Hey, it could be.
Yeah,
it could be.
Good point.
Or we could go to the defensive side and talk some DBs. And my guy, who I think has to be a difference maker, is Tony Anderson.
Ooh,
Tony Anderson with the amount of weapons the Vikings have, and the fact that the Surge are literally just going at him in that game, that semifinal game, I believe he's got to step up and have a turnaround game heading into the championship. He's going to get the opportunity to be on a Reese Horn, a Florian Bierbaumer, or one of those guys. And how do they defend him? Well, that's something we're going to have to wait to see and find out. But I think Tony Anderson's got to have a little bit of a bounce back game. They've got him to be that cover nickel guy. They also got him to help out in the run game. So I'm interested to see how Tony Anderson performs. And not official, but if they get Jordan Bulla back, then that presents a whole nother problem.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
I think Tony Anderson's got to be – I'm challenging Tony Anderson to be the difference maker in this game. What are your thoughts about that, you two offensive guys?
Yeah, I'll just – sorry. Go ahead.
I play DB.
I just wanted to say I think Tony Anderson, he looked timid in the semis. He looked injured, honestly. He didn't look healthy. So I hope that he gets healthy for this game because we want to see the best teams battle it out. Other than that, I think, Kari might be used in the passing game a bit more. The Ryan Fire, who knows? They pulled out that tight end, Souderland. He didn't do much all season. Then he catches the clutch touchdown. So whoever Whitinger draws it up for, that's who I'll pick. Yeah.
He could be the guy that takes flow because he plays everywhere. If you look at his Raiders tape, his Galaxy tape, he's literally played corner, started nickel, started safety, played a low linebacker.
He's big.
And he's played everywhere, so he could be the guy that takes flow because there's not a lot of people can do that length, and he's more like 6'3", 6'4", defensive back, crazy. So I think he might be the guy. But speed of Bua, if he's fit and healthy, the speed of someone like Jonas Schultz, who's also another speedy receiver. Torre is obviously very fast. Horn's obviously very quick rather than fast. He's fast, don't get me wrong, but like his route running is so smooth that it's hard to really, keep up with that sharpness. So I think the defensive backs for Ryan are overall going to have a few issues, like outside of the safeties, because they got two Germans that usually play on the outsides with Tillman, who had a fantastic game in the last game. Was his breakout game with that 2 interception forced fumble. So maybe they'll be wary of that. If they try him too much, then they could kind of repeat the same mistakes that Surge made.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely there's matchups all across the board here as we're breaking it down. Again, you know how I always say on Athletes Forum podcast, drop a comment, let us know. We'll interact with you, and we'll see what we